Judith. I know Judith, Malcolm and I know Judith very well. We actually got to go to New Zealand and stay for 2 months with Papa Son and Judith, so long that they even asked us to go ahead and they're like, "You're gonna go to Indonesia anytime soon, that'd be great," yeah. But we left their home and they were gracious guests, or we were gracious hosts, and we were gracious guests. We used up all their internet privileges to learn about New Zealand. Anyway, so this is from Judith, so. Thank you for coming to honor my husband and best friend and soulmate, Don Welch. From the time I first met him at age 15, I was privileged to witness how this one shining light of a human being touched life after life, just being himself. With his ever-present smile and unending laughter, with his magnanimous heart, his generosity of spirit, his genuine appreciation, respect, and love for all life in its many forms. He had a rare combination of a highly developed mind and an extraordinarily highly developed emotional intelligence and insight into the human condition. He gave considerable time and attention to these matters, emotions, behaviors, drives, and motivations that are common to the human experience. Don and I spent much of our time together talking about these things. He was an amazing teacher for me and always took me deeper than I went on my own because he could articulate his very considerate thoughts and observances and subsequent connections, whereas I primarily just felt things and respond from an intuitive and typical immediate place. As you can imagine, Don got into far less trouble in his communication and relationship than I have. I want to also let you know that Don is very much with us today. One of the fascinating experiences he shared with me during those last days in the ICU was a vision he had of being at his funeral. He was curious about it, and he said that, of course he would be there. Most people do that. He had been with me a lot. I even asked him to help me get the dogs in the other morning because I was running late for work and they were nowhere to be seen. Within 2 minutes, Fergus was at the door. So I am assuming that each of you have been touched by him in some way. I've never met anyone who has met Don who didn't have a story about him. And he had stories about you. What a storyteller. Always a humor and obvious affection, fondness or love for the subject of the story. The tributes that have flooded in from 2 hemispheres often speak of his infectious joy for life and what some might describe as craziness, a good kind, the life of the party. Trust me when I say that his wit would begin upon awakening. Before his body had time to get in gear, his mind was racing with witty observation of the tiniest things around him, or would arise from who knows where or what. It never ceases to amaze and fascinate me what a unique thought process this man had. As many of you know, I have a low tolerance for chit-chat or small talk. Too boring or irrelevant. But Don could hold my attention endlessly. While I wasn't his most attentive audience for long jokes, I appreciated the quirky wittiness far more. Some of you also know that Don had another side. His great sensitivity, his enormous compassion, his exquisitely developed understanding of love and relationship. This was his greatest gift unto me. Along with his devotion, loyalty, and unending support of every level imaginable, his depth of understanding and knowing me, even better than I knew myself, because I actually don't spend a lot of time thinking about myself due to my high activity level and being in a feeling state most of the time. Except when focused on others, particularly in my work. But he gave a lot of thought to who I am and anything and everything that was happening in my world. What an extraordinary experience to have this type of honest reflection and sharing each and every day of our lives together. Without question, the single most important thing to Don was the whole notion of relationship. He also told me that in fact, it was the only important thing in life. He was largely without ego, an amazing thing all by itself, with literally no material needs or wants. Can you imagine having to force someone into buying clothes for himself? Which was also a shock at our second time around, as he was hands down the best dressed boy in high school. A thing that may be as surprising to all of you as it is surprising that at one time I actually taught cooking. Judith doesn't really always cook, yeah. John was my guru, my unlimited teacher for the art of the relationship. I had been blessed with a number of very long friendships ranging in time for as long as 49 years. I invest in those relationships and vice versa. However, I have had far less skill in developing those same kinds of relationships with male partners. There are several reasons for this. One is that my first love, Don Welch, was a hard act to follow. I never was able to connect with a man at all the levels I did with Don for 2.5 years in high school. We talked about that often, how we initially shaped and formed our ideas of what relationships was with each other, and that served as blueprints for our future relationships. I simply did not find another man who could meet me in the way he had. When we reconnected after 37 years of living our lives separate from one another, the connection was immediate, and we recognized each other's hearts and souls in those first emails, and never spent a day after that without each other, even though I tried. I had been independent and living alone for the previous 15 years, and I was a bit of a hard shell in terms of the whole notion of living together. It took me another 2 years before the barrier came crashing down and my heart began opening to the capacity to commit to the love of my life. At that point, Don prepared me to move from California to New Zealand to begin our adventure together, and what an adventure it has been. Together, we were quite a force to be reckoned with, even for us sometimes. Two strong-minded, strong-willed, intelligent, opinionated, and emotional people whose primary connection was mental, emotional, and spiritual. There was no territory we didn't traverse together, which wasn't always a pleasant journey for me, who has always been a conflict avoidant. With our first big blow-up, I thought we were at the end of the road, not an infrequent fear or thought. But Don, in his loving wisdom, helped me understand that it was all part of the dance and our process. He was fearless and relentless in his steadfast ability to hold himself, me, and us in a state of unconditional love. One of our strengths and joys was how our creative energies were so fully in tune with each other. We thoroughly loved the process of building two beautiful homes together. We didn't always enjoy some of the stressors that accompanied that, but we were a strong team in dealing with it. Especially our second home has been a peaceful sanctuary that has provided us with the space that our relationship needed and deserved. Don called our marriage, quote unquote, the conversation, because we spent no less than an hour at dinner and afterwards sharing our thoughts, feelings, observations, experiences, and daily life in the most intimate ways, every single night without exception. Even in high school, it was primarily us, always in our very personal and private bubble. We thoroughly enjoyed sharing some time with each other, but only a very few people had ever entered into that bubble with us. It is just who and how we have always been. I can vividly remember walking down the hallway in school between classes and seeing Don come towards me, along with hundreds of other students. I never once saw anyone's face but his. Our bubble was also the reason that we both knew our relationship needed to be experienced in New Zealand. We were never about merging the lives each of us had created during those 37 years apart. We needed to create a new one that was ours. It was never meant that everything and everyone and all our loved ones weren't still as deeply in our hearts. It just was the way we were. That kind of thing that just is, at such an integral level that you actually have no choice but to honor it. And of course, the bubble was shared by our own vision of family. Macintosh, Oscar, and Fergus, and Snowflake the cat. They have been the center of our intimate little universe and participate quite actively in the conversation. I know that from being there, yes, that's very true. I choose to have this celebration of Don's life at the Fairfield House because this was the last place he demonstrated his huge generosity of heart and spirit. He put on put on a Mexican fiesta as a fundraiser for Chai and Dex Deva, who suffered a financial loss this past January when severe weather conditions closed down the Evolve Festival. Chai is the man who has been putting me back together every 2 weeks for the last 7 years with his healing touch and deeply spiritual energy. Don had never met him, but when he heard the news, he immediately offered to do a fundraiser. It was at a time this past autumn when I had begun to notice that Don was becoming less present and increasingly more exhausted. But he had put in several long days of shopping, preparing, and cooking for this event, his last act of service. He loved to cook, as you all know. It was his offering of love made visible. I could go on and on about his many admirable and lovable qualities and quirks, but I think the way in which he chose to transition out of this life says more about him than anything else I could say. It was very obvious to me now that what I had held as a spiritual belief throughout my life is true, at least for Don and I. At some level, he knew he would be leaving our life as we have known it. I now think it may have begun when we were in Bali last August. We both had what I considered to be profound healings at the most remarkable place either of us could ever have imagined. Don credits his immediate change in food choices and subsequent effects on his appetite with what he learned from the chef he had a private 4-hour class with. The food was nutrient-dense vegan. My belief is that the most core issue of this lifetime for him was finally healed, and his relationship with food and with his body was reset to those